Okay, we're live now. Thank you, Mathilde, for joining. Hello, YouTube and audience joining in live. Today we have the third episode of the CRM Hygiene Series, where we're talking about job titles. So before we head into what job titles are, let's talk about quickly about why we're doing the CRM Hygiene Series. At in the GTM engineers community, we talk a lot about forward-thinking GTM concepts. We talk about using agents on top of your data, but of course, you can't use your agents until your data is clean and reliable, and everyone can trust it. And turns out that normalizing job titles is a big part of doing that. And so we have one of the better people in the industry looking at this, Mathilde. Please tell us who is Mathilde and what does she do, and why are we talking about job titles today?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Tariq. I'm Mathilde. I work in operations at Captain Data, and I've been a RevOps for 4 years now. And today we're going to talk about job title normalization and how it's important, actually. We all know that the CRM data quality, the data quality in your CRM is essential. It could actually, if you do it wrong, it can be sometimes like a 15% loss of revenue if we listen to the Gartner studies. So it's really important that we smash that. And job titles, it's actually funny because it's part of the CRM that takes into consideration the marketing, because there's the people that you should actually be talking to according to your persona, beautiful slides and positioning, and there's actually what happens in the CRM. So it's important to link that data, and that's basically what you're going to be able to be doing with the job title normalization, putting a whole lot of title that you see on LinkedIn into beautiful boxes that are easy to read and that give you the right insights.
Perfect. Let's say hi to the people just coming in live. So we have some familiar faces and some new ones. Hello, Sanjay. Hi, Liam. Hi, Fahad. Anne-Sophie. Hello. Andrew, Alex, Gaurav, Manoj. Thank you for joining us. Um, so how this workshop is going to go is that we have two things in store for you. So number one, let's talk about what is the impact of not doing this workflow right. And then we're going to talk to you about a couple of tools that we've been building with Mathilde that are pretty handy, that upon your request we can share with you to fork into your own workspaces. And throughout, you can post questions. So if there's something that we haven't covered, if there's something you want to ask Mathilde, let's leverage her time. What's cool about Mathilde is that she works with a lot of clients with Cap Data. So she sees a lot of people like working with data, trying to normalize it, trying to use it in their CRM. So there's a wealth of experience that we can tap into her. So without saying much more, shall we head in, Mathilde?
Let's go.
Cool. All yours.
All right. So, like I was just saying, basically, job title personalization involves a lot of people, marketing, BDRs, everybody at the company if you're doing it right. And it's actually doing it wrong, which is going to be the first focus today, can be a big waste of time because you're not having the right prioritization for the sales team. You're not mapping correctly. You're not sourcing the right person. The reporting can be messed up. So it's really all along the funnel can be a big mess. And more importantly, it can lead to the wrong insights. For example, at Captain Data 2 years ago, we actually didn't market for small teams. But one of the first things that kind of appeared to me was that we actually had a lot of like account executives, VCs, or solo founders that were buying Captain Data, but it's just like we never really cared for them, to be honest. And it's something that if you see now today, and if you actually go to Captaina's website, you'll see that we have a plan to accumulate for when you only have like one person in the team, and that could only focus on a couple of use cases. So it's important that you also consider. It doesn't mean that you should switch your whole strategy, but it means that at least you need to have the data to be able to choose what you want to do in terms of a strategy. And it could also lead to poor segmentation I was talking to. And it's important to keep in mind that basically it's going to be very different based on your company, the context. Everybody has their own record categorization, which properties are going to be important, how often they're updated. So it really goes into a lot more than just one job title that is put in another box. And what usually happens is that you don't need it until you need it. And so when that happens, you will have to do mostly yourself, or maybe VAs if you have a little budget on the side, and to just kind of keep all of that. It's actually one of the first thing I was doing at my previous company. I was just doing a whole bunch of formulas in Google Sheets to just be able to keep track of all of the job titles. But now, thankfully, we have a lot of cool tools like Cargo that help us do that flawlessly.
Mathilde, for people who are, let's say, less versed in GTM topics, VAs, by the way, Andrew, are virtual assistants. Um,
Yeah.
how would you break this problem down? So, what are these personas that you're targeting, right? What does it mean to classify like a list of personas into some category personas? Can you just break it down into some very first principle sort of symbols so that we know everyone can be on the same page?
Break down the like the normalization, what it actually means.
Yeah, talk to us about how the problem is created. Like, what is their category persona? And why do we need to classify them? Where do you put them in the CRM? Let's like dumb it down for just to lay the
Oh yeah,
basis.
yeah. Okay, I just want to make sure that I got your question. So yeah, I mean, all of this is basically the V1 version. I would say to do it is typically have the job title property that I hope everybody to this day has in their CRM. I think in this community, it's kind of a no-brainer. But you would have like the job title. You also have sometimes you're pulling experiences. You're just pulling a whole lot of different data points that you have on that specific person, and it's being able to put a broader label on that person. So for example, everybody that will be in I don't know, like a growth operation, GTM operation, revenue operation, they're essentially doing the same things. And so it's being able to say, okay, well, no matter what fancy title you put on LinkedIn, or no matter the industry variations, and also like it depends on the company side, depends on the location, that you're just being able to map all of these individuals into one bigger category that will be, of course, more relevant when afterwards you're doing the kind of reporting and trying to get the insights on basically who are you talking to, what's closing in terms of persona.
Interesting. And so you mentioned, for example, these growth personas, right? And I guess those are the people that you guys target at Data. Um, how does it work? How do you build a scoring on the back of this persona? How do you build a segmentation? Like, to talk us through how you use this category persona categorization.
It's definitely a big part of the outreach process. So there's two sides, I think, to this whole normalization story. It really helps in the CRM, like I said, to get like the insights to be okay. Well, basically, what closed the most this quarter? Maybe what should we try to push more incentives on for the next quarter? That type of insight. And there's a whole thing that we mostly do, to be honest, at Captain Data, is to be able to have broader approaches based on this personas. And so that will typically be like booleans that we use, and that we actually have our whole like a big persona database that we store in Notion to be able to update it continuously. And it's something that it's both part of it, like it can be automated, but I also try to go often and kind of see, because obviously it's with AI you can do a lot of things, but you also have to double check what you're doing, because you don't want to have spent a whole lot of resources even in like enrichments and sourcing and stuff like that, and then be like, oh, actually maybe this title was not relevant, but you only see it too late. But yeah, for us it's mostly on those two sides. There's a part of in the CRM where we just like match up everything, and we have an additional property that is called persona, very simply. And so everything is mapped back to that priority, and then we actually add that information as a meta, so as an input every time we have like the sales navigator searches, or anything to actually any module that has like a find lead approach will actually have that additional input of the persona is RevOps, for example, because we already know that all of these titles are RevOps, and so pretty much avoids us from having to do it later down the line in the CRM because we already
Mm.
have data from scratch.
So I guess two things, right? Like every time you're inserting a contact to the CRM, you're categorizing their job title into a particular category, right? And you're
Yeah,
building some planning based of that and some visualization. And on the flip side, when you're looking for stakeholders who are relevant to Kaplan data, you are using the full like knowledge base of what title variations that persona has to get as many people as possible, right?
yeah, exactly. And those people that we source are, again, like every time that we um, refresh the CRM and we detect changes, it also goes back to that little tool that actually helps us to recategorize if needed.
Perfect. And we'll come to that tool in a second. Um,
Nice
how do
transition, you
people?
see.
This is all orchestrated before. Um, how do people get this wrong? What are the sort of most blaring mistakes that you've seen in your experience?
It's honestly one or the other. There's, I hope, in this community a lot of people who are doing right, but it's often too few or too much in terms of setup. It's like I said, I think the first version I ever did of this job title variation was just like a HubSpot workflow where I was adding all of the titles like in the category, and then it was saying, oh, if it doesn't match this, then look for this. If it doesn't match this, it looks for it. But it really, you have to start somewhere. What is really um, annoying, and the major part of why this is actually something that is needs to be taken into account as a use case, is that there are so many variations for a specific use case, and there's like the variations that should happen just linked on the persona, just linked on like the industry, the location, the company size, like we talked about. But there's also the variation that, Tariq, you wake up one morning and you want to change your title to, I don't know, like president of a GTM engineer or a country. Nobody's gonna, prevent you from doing that. And it's also
Mm,
a lot of things that you have to consider because it will change from company A to company B. It will really be different depending on that, and it can also be kind of misleading because the easiest way to start is with the job title property, but it's something that you had talked about before, actually, Tariq. But it's job title is cool. It's a start. If you already have a system with that, then honestly, better than nothing. But there's a whole bunch of things that are additional. For example, in the communities, GTM engineer would be a good example. Now every day, like, people are adding themselves as the communities as experiences. And so
mm.
if I don't know, if I tomorrow a new person from the cargo's GTM engineering community as like member as an experience, then maybe you're missing out on a very nice like a persona fit that would be a GTM GTM engineer. You could get that from the company, but that would have like your super relevant job title. But because they're added as member, you don't get that information. So there's a bunch of points from like the experiences that you're able to pull, and obviously an intelligence layer on top of, just to be able to understand, well, what's their actual title. Same for VCs, for example. Like, VCs will add all of the companies that they invest in as experience, but it doesn't mean that they're like they have their main experience, if we can say, is actually being a VC at their
Right.
VC company.
Right. Usually you'll have like 20 titles of being board members, and then you'll have the actual
Yeah.
WC analyst. Um, Got it. And so I guess right now we live in a much better world than when you were building a Google Sheet, sort of like categorizations hard coded, right? Because it's so much easier to just like pass it to an AI node, and you can sort of tell it which are the output categories, and then you take it like that. Correct.
Oh yeah, the job is a lot funnier. It's a lot more fun today than a bunch of years ago. That's for sure.
So I guess you'll have way fewer people who are overcomplicating it, and mostly just people who have not yet done it, right?
Yeah, we would just have, or maybe because there are all of the things that are available, but maybe you don't have the skill, or maybe you don't have like a, I don't know, if your company, because of course, being in this community, we're kind of the forefront of everybody's kind of doing cool things, but there are also a lot of companies who are really happy with having like outdated data. They don't mind if the data is from 6 months like old, like it's not really going to change their life. But yeah, so there's also a big part who have not really done it. It's just that they don't really care.
Yeah, but it's actually funny because it's not like your classic enrichment sort of problems where it's very expensive to do this for your CRM. When we were building it out, it was mostly just making some calls to OpenAI, right? Either you have your own API key or use some credits, and then if you want, it helps to have like LinkedIn integration. But again, that's just like a
Yeah.
credit per contact. That's not crazy expensive.
No, it's not. But I mean, it's not. But at the end of the day, it has to be used. Having the persona beyond whatever marketing is doing, but it's also when we talk about like having more personalized outreach, having even for nurturing purposes. I mean, there's a whole of actions that you can do or ads that you can run based on specific personas, so it kind of calls to their problem. But if you don't care about that whole personalization aspect, and if it's not being asked in the data that you need, I guess you don't have any like a kind of, yeah, nobody's kind of forcing you to to do that, so you're not doing it.
Mm, very clear. Um, so let's talk about the first sort of pitfall. So what does it mean to keep refining categories?
Yeah, I mean, iterate. I think if you're in the cargo's GTM community, it kind of is in your blood, but it's still essential to keep saying it. Like I said, like you can have V1s, V2, V3. Like it's really important to have all of the variation that you're getting from your CRM, also people that you're getting like in the end in your outreach, because there's probably some titles that, because we've been talking about like adding, but there's also titles that actually you realize should be removed. So that's also something that you need to keep track of, and that's probably something that you realize after an outreach campaign typically, where like, oh, maybe this was not the right feed. So it's really being able to, whatever you're doing, whatever number of iterations, it's important that you keep track of all of these variations like in the same database. For us, like I said, it's Notion, but it can be really, really anything. So you're able to really map them and not redo the work, and not, for example, like categorize as a persona A so one day and then 2 months later categorize it as a persona B, but without your knowledge, basically.
And just for the context of the audience, so because we're going to be showing you how to like use an OpenAI node pretty simply. The thing is, LLMs are not deterministic, right? So it might just be that one day Mathilde is a GTM engineer, and the next day she's a growth marketing person, etc. And so usually we're passing like the whole experience as object in the title, and we're telling that AI node, hey, these are the categories that you could map this input to. And so here, what we're saying is just keep on refining that like target category list, so that reflects like your understanding of the business, because obviously that evolves. I know that in the early days at Cargo, whom we thought were our personas, our champions, our decision makers, are not necessarily whom we believe today. And so if we had kept the same list of job titles, then we wouldn't be doing as well. Um, I guess that's pretty simple. Then we have a second pitfall. Um, what does it mean? Why is it important to sort of like keep a legacy of what you've been classifying?
Yeah, we kind of went ahead. We talked about it a little bit in the previous minutes, but it's really about making sure that you're not redoing, that you're being consistent, basically, and you're not redoing anything that has already been done, and that you're leveraging AI as well to make sure that, because you're not going to have somebody who's going to look through the experiences like today, it really makes no sense, but so you're able to have a prompt and something that will really encapsulate all of the different levels of that person, like everything we talked about,
Mm,
on an additional, in addition to just the pure job title, being able to add like a interaction from, I don't know, ads, like the experiences, stuff like that, that keep making it relevant.
yeah, got it. And so I guess these are what we call key pair mappings, right? Um, and so how we did it in the tool, and we'll show that to you in just a second. is every time we were making a classification, we were upserting that to a data model, right? So like for that key and for that pair, and so every time then we search for a new title, like to categorize it, we see if we've already categorized it, and if not, then we go and ask AI anew. So this way, you keep just an automatic legacy without having to do too much work in maintaining it. And that being said, let's go to set this up, shall we?
We shall. Okay.
So
Let's.
this is the first tool, right? So what's happening here? It's maybe a bit small, so I'm just
Yeah, I was gonna
gonna
say I have glasses, but I still remain a blind person overall. But I'll probably yeah.
let me zoom in here. So we're just gonna go node by node.
Yeah. So this is
Just walk us through the logic here.
yeah, for sure. So this is what we would use basically to get the latest information that you have from somebody. So like we said, this is obviously optional, but this is definitely recommended to make sure that you have the freshest data. But you would start from whatever data that you have in your model, then you enrich it with LinkedIn to be able. Typically, you may not have all of the experiences and everything mapped already in your CRM or already in your searches. So that's also why there is that LinkedIn step there, and then that will pretty much just enrich your contact. And then in the variable step, we're just getting all of these different variables, and we're mapping that. Basically the step right after is going to be the prompt where we're able. Sorry, we moved it a little bit too fast. But yeah, you're just searching back, and then you're making sure it's that little branch is the thing that we talked about earlier with the legacy, to make sure that basically we're not redoing anything that differently. And so we're checking the legacy and then running the prompt, and the prompt will basically uh, be the tool. I mean, I just want to pause here because the idea of the prompt is obviously to take all of that context information in addition to the job title and be able to output a persona. And we'll share the prompt if you want, but I just want to make it super clear that for all of the tools that we're gonna share with you today, because this is a job title normalization that is super important, like depending on your context, you're gonna have to do the work at the end of the day, and you're gonna have to match those based on what you have. But yeah, the prompt will just facilitate the process, and then you'll be able to replace like what you need, what you have in terms of persona, if there are additional criteria. But yeah, at the end of the day, it needs to be tailored to your business, really. And it's getting all of these element of context and then mapping them back to an output persona, basically.
Very clear. So yeah, I mean, get some context from LinkedIn, check if we've already categorized, and then like otherwise use an AI. I guess in the AI, like the only moving part, as you said, the prompt is pretty specific. So we thought about putting a screenshot of it here, but you can ping us either me or Mathilde, and we'll share you the one we use. The more important thing is to use a JSON schema. And so there you just define the output. So every time it's the same output and always follows one of the categories, right? Um, there's a very good question from Andrew. Um, do you only categorize like the vanilla title itself, or do you actually do you also have a feel for like mapping how senior they are and what role they play in the company and so on and so forth?
I don't want to say the golden it depends, but I'm actually kind of getting to you. For us, for example, we only take senior titles. Like in the job title mapping, we exclude anything that has assistants, or even that like account. We like sales, but we like VP sales, not really account executives. So it will depend, but yeah, of course, if it's important for you. But then it also depends on your persona, because for example, in a company, you might only have like a VP sales as a persona, and in some company, like a customer actually I was talking to yesterday, they have one persona, and the persona is sales, and
Mm.
everybody working in sales more or less is gonna in that same category. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Terry.
Yeah, I mean, I guess setting that up is pretty easy if that's relevant to your company, right? You can just have one more field in that mapping where you have the categorization, and then you have one more field which is like the level. So for some people, it can be champion or decision maker or user, whatever. and for other people it can just be senior or junior and so on and so forth. So that can be adapted to your company, correct?
Yeah, and especially you're able on the LinkedIn information that you're getting, you'll also have the seniority that you can easily get directly from the LinkedIn information, basically.
Perfect. So I feel like Liam has that set up on his side. Liam, we will be sharing the prompt. I'll send you an email. Anyone else who wants it, maybe we'll just send it to all the participants actually. We'll send that with the
You're
tool.
feeling generous.
Yeah, why not? Just don't just make sure you're not getting Captain categorizations. Just make them your own, and then you get.
Wow.
Okay, so and the next step is pretty simple, right? Like we build this tool and you just need to add it to the workflow wherever you're using it. So um, before you send anything to your CRM, you just make a quick call to this tool.
Yeah.
That's the nifty thing about tools. You can just call them from anywhere, and then you push it into the CRM.
Yeah, and that's especially where you need that JSON output to be. That's where it's going to be the most relevant. Because if you're technically, you could use the tool on the side just for your own research, and the JSON output would not be that important. But obviously, if you're mapping it back to your CRM, uh, it's going to be important.
Perfect. So, and Andrew has a good question. Are LLMs handling non-English titles as well? From my experience, they're pretty good at handling multiple languages. No, Mathilde, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for example, us, we also have a lot of French people in our database since we're a French company, and yeah, and it's actually something that is encapsulated in the prompts. I could send you actually an earlier version of that includes the French language, but it's definitely something that you can add. Basically, the more information you give in terms of if you just say I want people managing sales, you're gonna have something really broad, but then whenever you're being able to kind of refine and say that basically you want people in several languages, it's going to be able to encapsulate pretty good. I cannot confirm for all of the languages, but at least for French, I've had a good experience so far.
I've had some good experience as well, like with Spanish, with some Asian languages. I feel like it's pretty robust across the board. I guess golden rule of thumb, and it's pretty obvious, just in the system prompt. So you always have a prompt and a system prompt in the AI node. Make sure you tell it to always output in English. Make sure we're not like clouding things up. So let's go to the bonus part. So that's your main tool for normalizing job titles before they go into the CRM. Then we have a bonus part, which maybe tell us about this bonus part.
Yes, so this is basically, of course, a big part of the job title normalization happens in the CRM. But like we said, you can also do it kind of reversal work and do it beforehand by having all of your prompts that are already ready. And in this case, you would have booleans that would be typically matched to a sales navigator URL that you can use in the current job title, but that would be showing up in all of the different profiles. And here you actually have two types. So there's one that, but I mean, it's just same thing, different inputs, basically. In the end, the goal is always to add that persona input in addition to whatever search you're going to do to be able to refrain from having to recheck the persona later down the line, because you should be getting the right job titles, basically. And there's one that will be directly from a job title. So for example, if I say I want GTM engineers, I will just say GTM engineers, and then it will output like all of the different job titles. And the other one is a broader version that will just be kind of like if you were talking to if you were asking your prompt engineer how to do it, and then you would have I don't know, like we were talking about earlier about like people managing sales in San Francisco, and then it's obviously always the same thing, is as much information that you can add into this. But even if you stay kind of broad, it will already give you the different job title variations, and especially considering like the industry, geography, that type of thing. And
Yeah.
that's something that I've already kind of used pretty well, both in like English and in French.
Got it. So one is a natural language sort of query where you can just
Yeah.
write a phrase, and the other one is like a title, and where you use it. So this will make more sense for people to have context. Is here we're looking for stakeholders, right? So we're going back to LinkedIn and saying, hey, can you find me prospects that work at this company? And obviously you need to classify which titles that you're interested in. And this way it generates your Boolean. Boolean is like a search term, right? It can be like GTM engineer and GTM architect and growth ops, whatever. Um, and so it's like the complete set of possibilities that LinkedIn could cover for all of the titles that it looks for. Correct, Matthew?
Yeah, that will be and it already encapsulated because sometimes booleans are can be a pain because you want to use like quotation marks if you have several. You want to use and or not. You don't want to have like a boolean that is too big because otherwise LinkedIn might say ouch and give
Mm,
you okay bye bye 404. And so that's not something that you want. And so this is also kind of optimized to kind of say okay, well, you're gonna have your thing that is constructed with the keywords that you want or the standalone titles, not the titles that you don't want. And then again, it's gonna always up to you to kind of refine what you want afterward after a few tries. And these are obviously things that you can use either in a workflow or just as a standalone while you do a few tests in your CRM or outreach campaigns.
got it. And just for context for the audience, so whenever we build with like new users in Cargo, one of the things we spend the most amount of time on when doing this kind of workflow is just coming up with a nice list of titles that actually covers all the possibilities that you're looking for. Usually, people just have not enough variation, and so they're getting very few stakeholders, so they're leaving a lot of good contacts on the table. And so, using this tool just speeds up that entire process. Again, we can share this tool with you, and most of the power is in the prompt. Uh, so that was the bonus part. Let's go toward wrapping this up. Is there stuff, Mathilde, that we haven't talked about here? Because we try to keep things simple, right? But what would you do in an ideal world with a lot of resources? And again, this is the cue for the audience. If you have questions, things that we haven't covered, or a scenario that you're interested in us to talk about, this is the time to bring it up. So, Mathilde, what would you do with like, let's say, an unlimited time, unlimited credits and resources? What have we not covered in terms of job title normalization here?
Yeah. I think even with unlimited times, I wouldn't spend too long on it because it's honestly not it has to be done and it has to be done nicely, but it's also not the most stimulating subject that we can do, obviously. I would, for anybody who's trying to kind of refine their approach or get started on that, I would honestly start small because I think that's one of the main pains when you're trying to have like it's better to have a v1 that will only map, I don't know, like even I was going to say 50, but it might seem like already a lot, but it's better to start with something that will not map everything but that will still be relevant than to have something that has a big thing because you want to have the right data. I mean, you want to have the right data in the sense of the correct data. You want to have the right data to be able to make the right decisions depending on what's coming up in reporting, but you also don't want to be too broad because otherwise you might say, oh, really nice. Like typically if you encapsulate everything in sales and you're like it might work for some, but for some more specific industries, it might actually be something terrible because you don't want to, you don't want to add too many people in the same bundles. Anyway, but it's really fun, I think, to be able to work on a lot of prompts and refine them. And obviously, we'll give you the basic one to get started. But there are so many different things, and don't do it alone. Like talk to marketing, kind of look at the data in the CRM, even if you have to go through like the very annoying kind of export to a spreadsheet and see what you have to have more visibility. But yeah, it's not something that should be done lightly, but it also not something that will be done in just one day and one version. So it's important to take your time, but not too much time.
And so, last question before we wrap up. I mean, from our experience at Cargo, most people think about this too late. When do people start thinking about this sort of problem in your experience? Like,
When it's asked by your boss.
what
When
triggers
it's
the
like,
boss to ask this
oh,
question?
when it's It's usually either, I mean, it can come in two different points, but it's usually a demand by somebody at some point of just like, oh, we don't have that. But it also comes with the whole use case of enriching your CRM, of just like, oh, we actually don't have the right data. And then when you start having data that is actually updated and it's fresh data, and you're like, oh, like, how can I leverage this more? And that's when you would be kind of doing that. I don't know if you've had a different experiences or other example, but I think that would be the most frequent one.
Yeah, for me, I feel like more people when your campaign list is for people. Yes. Yeah. Most people think about this when they're looking for stakeholders because they just don't find enough depth, right? And then they really think about those job titles. And then once they generate that list and they want to see, hey, whom do I put in which sequence? So that's when they start thinking about it. But usually we're just like
Yeah,
blindly sending sequences until at some point we want to, improve performance. That's usually way down the maturity cycle. And so that's why we have this series to sort of like look at topics that are boring or overlooked, but in fact make a lot of difference to performance. So this is my finishing plug for YouTube. So people who are not who are watching this replay and who are not in the community, this event was produced with the GTM engineers community. Mathilde is a living, breathing member of this community. She asks questions and answers them. She's very helpful. Um, Liam says, for us, it came when our marketing performance was dropping. We had a lot of context. We didn't know how to classify and target correctly. Yeah, exactly, right? Like it's only when you
yeah,
see a dip in the numbers and you feel like, yeah, you should switch to next year that you started doing it. But in fact, it's pretty easy as we saw. Like you have the template, it just takes like half an hour to set up, and then you just make sure you call the tool every time, call your CRM. So if there are people who are tuning in and they're not part of the community and they would like to be part of these conversations, then there's a QR code in front of you. Just use that. So this is a series of episodes we're doing on the CRM hygiene. We've already covered deduplication. We've covered false associations between contact and companies. Today it was job title normalization. And the next episode we're going to be having is on email validation. So keep an eye out for that. And because we're accumulating these episodes, we're going to be making a handbook of CRM hygiene. And so hopefully next time someone is setting up their CRM or just getting the growth function started, they can just go to the handbook and learn everything that we've been talking about. I would like to thank Mathilde for joining us. Please, audience, thank you for joining us as well. Thank you, Mathilde, for sharing your best practices for the templates and the tools. So we will be sharing those with the participants of the event. And if you miss someone, just ping us and we'll send it to your way. Any last words, Mathilde?
let's start building. But thank you so much for having me, Tariq, and thank you to everybody who asked question. And we'll be in the community anyway.
Awesome. Well, see you all in the community. I'll be sharing the replay and the templates there as well. So see you at the next episode. And Mathilde, thank you again. Have a nice day, end of the day to everyone.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Ciao.